I just have to go to a bathroom.
Welcome into Still Poddable, the best Celtics podcast out there, available on Patreon, patreon.com/stillpodable, Monday through Friday. This is the free version on the CLNS YouTube, powered by Prize Picks. Use promo code CLNS and you'll get a $100 deposit match on Prize Picks. I am Sam Jam Packard, joined by Brian B. Robb of MassLive.com, and we are reacting to one and a half of the play-in games at this point. We'll talk all about the Heat and the Sixers, the most important game of the evening. But, B. Robb and I, we saw enough of the Hawks-Bulls game and we're ready to call it. With 50% of the ballots in, we're declaring a Bulls victory. There could be some wild changes with the mail-in votes in the second half, but we'll keep you updated as the evening goes on. But the focus of the evening, because really, I don't think any of us believe the Bulls or maybe even the Hawks have a chance of winning in the next game, although they might, considering maybe some injuries. But let's talk about the game here, the main event. 76ers win 105-104. And B-Rob, as a Celtics fan, I had a whole host of different emotions about who I wanted to win this game. But it is the 76ers who prevail. They will play the New York Knicks, leaving the possibly broken Miami Heat still alive to possibly fend off the Celtics. What was your reaction to kind of this very back and forth game?
What a roller coaster. What a wild night. I mean, this is par for the course, I feel like, with those two teams. That's the exact type of wacky game that you would expect in the old Batum game. I mean, that, like, push everything else aside. We'll talk about all the ramifications later and all the injury stuff, but that a turn back the clock moment for him, 6 threes, a huge block in the final minute, forcing another backcourt violation too. It's just like on a night where Embiid was meh and Maxey clearly didn't have it consistently. Someone was stepping up, and his name wasn't Tobias Harris. It was Nicholas Batum.
It was definitely not Tobias Harris. Yeah, just 6 of 10 from deep for 20 points. I think his season high. He was talking some smack after the game. He's like, I knew I'm a 40% 3-point shooter. Like, you guys shouldn't be that surprised. Everyone was surprised by the throwback Batum game. But it's just like a wild roller coaster. The Heat got out to this big lead in the second quarter by playing their really junk everything up zone. Kind of had some flashbacks to maybe some Celtics series against the Heat where it's just the 76ers turning the ball over again and again and again and allowing Heat to get out to this massive lead. I think they are by 14 points at some point. And that's kind of the formula at least Celtics fans have accepted here against playing the Heat, especially in the playoffs. They struggle to score so much on offense that really, if you don't turn the ball over, you should be able to kind of get back into the game. That's what the Sixers did in the second half. I mean, obviously Batum had a lot of scoring, but they really just cut down on turnovers and were able to get themselves back in this game because the Heat just were not able to generate any sort of consistent offense in the second half. Jimmy Butler, not really there whatsoever. He had 9 points. Really, their entire offense was Tyler Hero. Bam Adebayo.
Get on his back, and that back wasn't carrying much.
Yeah, and so at the start of this game, I was like, the Heat are going to be annoying with their zone. I don't really want to have the Celtics play them, so I was kind of rooting for the Heat. I also didn't think Joel Embiid was looking that healthy, and I was like, that's very much easy, in the series. Then Jimmy Butler gets hurt. He knocks knees with Kelly Oubre, and then he's just hobbled the rest of the game. And I was like, maybe it's better if the Celtics play the Heat because they got to hurt Jimmy Butler. The Heat still have to play the winner of this game tonight on Friday night and before even a possible game on Sunday. And so I don't know. I just had all sorts of mixed emotions trying to figure out which was the best matchup for the Celtics, ultimately walking away thinking maybe there's a reason these two teams are the 7th and 8th team in the Eastern Conference because I just don't think either team looked like they were capable of winning a first round series at this point.
Yeah. Embiid clearly is not close to 100% at this point. That's not a big surprise. I do see though that the Knicks and the Sixers have opened up as it's a pick'em in some sports books out of the gate here. I expect that to shift.
That I would, if I was a betting man, I would be betting on the Knicks right now. Embiid's, he's not going to last an entire series, and they have Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein, two like guys with size who they can throw at Embiid. It's not like he's just going to dominate them in the post. He doesn't even seem to want to go in the post.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one in terms of where those teams are at, but it's certainly a situation where, these are two teams where there's a far level below where the Celtics are right now. And despite all the theatrics and the drama, like nothing tonight really changed any of that in terms of how the Celtics should be looking in terms of either way this way landed. But to be honest now, though, like the Heat's off, like you said, the Heat's offense is just wretched. 42% from the field, 35% from three, but just that's there. Here, like when Jimmy Butler hurt his knee there in the first half, and then they had to be like, okay, we really just can't run much of anything through Butler anymore. It was pretty rough going with just like Tyler Hero's your guy, and then squander, get whatever else you can get. The bench showed up for them. Highsmith, Jacques, Kevin Love had a couple nice plays there, but there's just it's kind of a skeleton crew of what guys can give you offensively, and that certainly bodes well if they end up going through here to the first round, because whatever Butler has going on, it seems like that's not going to go away in a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, he was limping heavily, kind of throughout the game. Report as he was limping out of Wells Fargo. It was a lot of fun for my Celtics fans on the timeline saying that it was a fake injury and that he was only playing it up for the camera. I have no idea what happened. He did look to be in immediate pain when he knocked knees with Kelly Oubre, so I'm not necessarily going to question it, but I'm all here for the jokes. The thing that's most interesting to me about the Heat is, all right, Jimmy Butler goes down. Why is Tyler Hero the next solution? I understand Terry Rozier's out, but Bam Adebayo is supposed to be, he's not just like a one-way player. Like, he's obviously a very, very talented defensive player. People talking to him for kind of in the running for defensive player of the year, first team All-NBA defense. Why is he only taking 9 shots? Especially with a hobbled Embiid, it just feels like, and this is the problem with the Heat, it makes last year so much more infuriating, because it's like, well, where's Caleb Martin hitting 5 threes in a game? And like, where are all these like role players stepping up? Because the Heat have always struggled to generate reliable offense. And I think a problem with that is because Bam Adebayo is not a reliant or a consistent scorer. And so if Jimmy Butler is hurt, and if their entire offense has to go through Tyler Hero, there's a real chance that, and we're still calling the Bulls the winner, although it's only a 4-point game now in the third quarter. There's a real chance those Bulls
mail-in ballots are coming in.
Yeah,
weighing us.
Those sailors from overseas are really having some heavy Hawks voting. But I think there's a good chance that one of those teams could beat the Heat if they're still kind of banged up in this game on Friday night.
Oh yeah, I mean, both of these teams, their offenses are better than the Heat, regardless. And so the question is can the Heat just gumming up enough to where they can, get enough done, or just get a hot shooting night from random guys off the bench, which is certainly possible. Duncan Robinson didn't play tonight too, even though he was active. I think they're clearly saving Terry for the true must win on their home floor, knowing that, if those guys play a tough minutes tonight and they lost, then that may kind of put them out of the picture for Friday. But yeah, this is not this Miami team. We know it's not last year's team. We know they're missing a lot of pieces from last year's team, but it's painfully apparent now of just like how far they've fallen offensively this year. And that's, again, doesn't mean shit once a 7-game series starts, but for a 1-game like must-win situation, or just against a real rim protector in Embiid, that was on full display tonight. Because like you said, with Bam, the 9 shots, I think it just shows you, like, even Embiid at 80%, he's just such a monster defensively as a rim protector and just with the ground he can cover around the hoop, that Bam, that the Heat categorically said like, if we can't just run it through Bam because we're not going to get better looks, we're not going to get anything beyond just like mid-range jumpers from Bam.
Yeah, and so like, and I feel like their offense has historically been bad. The thing that still, I don't know if it scares me as a Celtics fan, but you still have to be aware of the Heat. They were able to throw out that just like junk zone that was kind of amorphous, a blob that the Sixers really didn't know what to do with there in the first half, especially there in that second quarter. And you would have to think that the Celtics, after playing the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row, have to be prepared to play against some zone. Although it's shout out to, I forget his actual handle, but his name's Max and he's on Twitter. And I was asking about the stats about like what the Celtics have done against the zone this year. And they've only had 173 possessions against a zone. They're 111 points, 0.6 points per 100 possessions, which is, I think they're seventh in the league. The league average is 103. So the Celtics have done pretty well against a zone. But it's obviously not something they've gotten a lot of exposure to. But in my heart of hearts, I would have to believe that the Heat can't just throw out a junk zone and like completely baffle the Celtics into losses. One, they have the experience playing against the zone. Two, that hopefully they have Kristaps Porzingis, the ultimate zone breaker, who you can just kind of give the ball to him in the middle and he can knock down that like elbow jumper.
100%. I mean, that the game we talked about earlier this week, Packard, where they kicked the shit out of them in Miami. That was a game where they saw plenty of junk zone, and Porzingis just dominated it from the top of the key or from the mid range there. And when you have 8 guys on the roster right now that are shooting 35% or better from 3-point range, and many more above 40%, that in theory this should be a situation where maybe it frustrates the Celtics for a few possessions here or there, but this is personnel wise, shooting wise, just a different animal than it was last year on that front. And but you know that this is what the Heat do. They junk shit up. Spoelstra will probably find new wrinkles to throw in the zone to kind of make the Celtics second guess what shots they should be taking or where passes are there, and inevitably, turn them into like a 20-point quarter at some point with this stuff. But the personnel is much better. The consistency of this team is much better. The passing with this year's team just feels like much better overall. So, but it is, I mean, this lines up as the test here. And I mean, Jay talked about it for the last couple months here. Like, this is bringing back the memories of 2022 right now, of the exercising demons with the Nets, and the Celtics could conceivably do this year with the Heat if they end up getting through.
We will check back in with the ballots on the Bulls and the Hawks after this message from our friends at Prize Picks.
All right, let's take a break here to hear from our sponsor, Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and the most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. March may be over now, but the biggest moments in college basketball tip off this month at the Final Four. Be a part of it. All the action on Prize Picks for both men and women's college basketball coming up this weekend. And you can also get in on the NBA playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level. The basketball's postseason. The playoffs begin obviously in 2 weeks, but you can get in the play-in round starting on April 16th at Prize Picks. So I know in the final couple weeks of the regular season here, one area to keep an eye on Prize Picks will be certainly with the Celtics and some of their bench players. I think going to be a lot more opportunities there for the likes of Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser of the world, while the starters rest up. So keep an eye on that. So if you want to check out Prize Picks, you can download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's CLNS on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100 on Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less, It's that easy on Prize Picks. And now back to the show.
Are you playing a video or am I just coming back?
No, you're just coming back.
Okay.
Because they'll put it.
And we're back here on Still Poddable. Checking in. The Bulls up by 6 midway through the third quarter. So still this official Still Poddable projection holds. That should be Bulls versus the Miami Heat in that final play-in game for the privilege of playing the Celtics at this to be the 8th seed to start that series on Sunday. Even if Jimmy Butler is hurt, I still think he's going to play because he is playoff Jimmy Butler, classic playoff Jimmy's always showing up in the clutch with his 19 points on 5 of 18 shooting in this critical play-in game. I still think the Heat are the favorites. And I think, as you're saying before the break, like, really it shouldn't matter for the Celtics. They should be heavily favored against all 3 of their possible opponents. But I do think there's some sweet redemption right now if they do get to play the Heat and beat them soundly in a series. Yes, they might play in the mud, but I think it's like well worth the challenge of we're beating the best coach in the league. We're beating the team that took us to 7 games 2 years ago, beat us in 7 games this year or last year, pretty much embarrassed us with the 3-0 start. And I do think it's a way to a kind of a good way for the Celtics to get that redemption, start off the playoff run. Like really, if you're going to have trouble with these teams, maybe you're just not as good of a team as we all thought they were, because just the level, there's just a huge talent gap between the Celtics and all 3 of the rosters they could potentially face.
Easily. And and I guess the other kind of sneaky thing here is, and I'll sound really dumb for this in a week or two if he ends up playing a big role in a series, is Hero in the playoffs for this like particular group in the last couple of years has not necessarily been a good thing for Miami. And tonight we saw some of that with like the 9 of 27 shooting, but defensively he's just someone to go at, which last year they didn't really have that weakness defensively in the starting 5. And now, I mean, we know going back to the bubble, he was just such a killer back then in 2020 in the Eastern Conference Finals then, but his career, I feel like, I don't know if it peaked at that point, but it certainly hasn't gone up to a level where now, he'll have to go on certain nights there, but it seems like he's certainly not capable of being like a number 2 or even number 3 on a really good team at this point. And that's because the Heat clearly have not been that consistently this year.
Yeah, and he was their only real option there in the fourth quarter. I guess, give him credit. He scored 16 of their 30 points, was 5 of 10. But Jimmy Butler took 2 shots, Bam took 1. Like their entire offense was just flowing through Tyler Hero. And I feel like one of the strong points, like he broke his wrist or his hand in that first game against Milwaukee last year. And it allowed players like Caleb Martin, Max Strus, and Gabe Vincent, who are not amazing defenders, but like are just much more serviceable than Tyler Hero is. It also helped that they shot 45% from 3 in the series against the Celtics. And so it made themselves that much more valuable. But I thought like the Heat, their strength, obviously, and this is still a strength of this team, is their defense. But if they have to play Tyler Hero, especially if Jimmy Butler's banged up a little bit, if they have to run offense through Tyler Hero and play him close to 40 minutes a game, I think it's just a pure place for the Celtics to target. And I feel like that's just a time for Jaylen Brown post-ups, Jason Tatum post-ups on a smaller, less agile defender. And it's something that I think the Celtics have been very good at and executing this year, of like finding the weak link, getting the ball to the right guy, and just playing through that. And so personally, I would welcome any matchup against the Miami Heat at this point.
Yeah, it feels like Heroes, like the ceiling on their defense just hits a certain spot when he's on the floor for those type of big minutes because of everything listed there. Like the Martins, the Highsmiths of the world, even the Hawkes, like Junior, like those guys are the ones that really can get after people defensively, really would make the Celtics' lives miserable there. But if there's always going to be someone to go after if Hero's on the floor. And this, like you said, the Celtics they're just much better at it this year. They're smarter about how to attack it. And Miami, it may take some time in this series against Miami because Miami will confuse them. Miami will try to hide them in certain spots or do certain switching where maybe it sends the Celtics in the wrong direction here or there. But the personnel matchups are at a point now where it really shouldn't matter because no matter who here he's on, like that's a mismatch. And whether it's Holiday taking him in the post or Derek White taking him off the dribble, or obviously Tatum and Brown just doing whatever with him when they get him in ISO, like that's that will be, they'll be licking their chops at that type of a matchup, and they'll have to, I don't know what the out is. I guess Terry Rozier X factor here, Duncan Robinson X factor. Are those guys? I guess that could take some of the pressure off.
I mean, Duncan Robinson and Terry Rozier are not necessarily known for their defense, but I guess if you need some other sources of offense, Terry Rozier had like a neck injury or something like bizarre like that. He wasn't even with the team there in Philadelphia. And so, hey, I'm a big Terry Rozier fan. I don't know if he's necessarily the solution there for the Heat. I don't want to call into question the integrity of our official prediction of the Bulls winning, but let's live in a hypothetical world where we might be wrong, or let's just live in the hypothetical world where either the Bulls or the Hawks win the game on Friday night. I'm curious, who do you think is a better matchup for the Celtics? We did see the Celtics lose back-to-back games to the Hawks in Atlanta, one with a basically half their team not playing, and then the redemption game with their entire team playing, and DeJounte Murray scoring 44 points on 44 shots. Who do you think would have a better chance of taking some games against the Celtics? This Hawks team with Trae Young coming off his hand injury, or DeMar DeRozan, Javonte Green, and the Chicago Bulls?
It's got to be the Hawks, right? Like they have the higher offensive upside. And I don't know if they're a better team now with Trae Young back, of like clearly defensively they were like a semi-decent team when he was out the last month plus, I feel like, and now with him back in the fold, that just kind of goes away. But they still have, three bona fide scorers with him, DeJounte Murray, and Bogdanovic, who has been phenomenal this year. And Capella is, has had rough ups and down stretches in the last couple of years, but I feel like he's been really good for the last couple of months. That's kind of how they won those games that week, because he was pretty good too. And the Bulls are just like, I don't know, they're old. Alex Caruso is really good. They've got some intriguing young guys, but
Kobe White's might be most improved player. He's been playing extremely well. The problem with the Bulls is just like their center Vucevic has completely fallen off a cliff. Like, yes. I think he's shooting 29% from three. And so if he can't do pick and pop, it's not like he's going to like guard. Like, you can easily spread the floor, and it's not like he's going to be guarding at the 3-point line. Obviously, Andre Drummond can do amazing things on the offensive glass, and we've seen the Celtics get hurt sometimes, giving up a bunch of boards. But if the Bulls want to play Andre Drummond for, more than 15 minutes in a game, I think the Celtics would welcome that, because he's another like kind of lumbering center. And so I think I like 4 players on the Bulls roster and maybe 4 players on the Hawks roster. You know what? If DeJounte Murray wants to shoot another 45 shots in a game, and like that's the key to victory for the Hawks, I would have to tip my cap to them. But it's probably looking like it's going to be the Bulls at this point. There's still projections are still holding. Bulls are up by 10 right now with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. They just haven't really, they don't have a lot of great 3-point shooting. And so I think things are looking up if you are a Celtics fan at this point heading into game 1 on Sunday.
Well, it's funny now, their 6th man right now, or at least tonight, Packard, is Javonte Green for the Bulls.
Wasn't he just not in the league for a while?
He was not on the team. I think they signed him probably early March.
Where did he go? He was on the team last year. I thought he was pretty good.
So I think he was playing in the G League for a while this year. For, I want to say, the Warriors G League team. He was definitely around, and then because he was dealing with, he got hurt at the end of last year and just wasn't never got right really, and then they brought him back clearly, and he's played well for them. I mean, I'll give him credit. Like I'm a big Javonte Green fan in general. Big mistake to move him with Daniel Tice way back in the day, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, that just kind of speaks to where the Bulls like depth is at this point, where it's like him and Drummond coming off the bench, Javon Carter there too. And yeah, like there's fun names, intriguing names in the starting five, but certainly defensively, the Bulls have no chance against the Celtics in a 7-game series. And offensively, they're just like less explosive than the Atlanta on the game at night out. Because like you said, the Vucevic part of them, that's like been the beginning of the end. Like once he falls off there, if you don't have that stretch ability to the extent that they've had in the past, like to cover up his defensive warts, then it's game over. It's like just the Orlando Magic all over again 5 years ago.
I'm going to put you on the spot, B-Rob. Given that we've already declared the Bulls are going to win, and given we don't know exactly what Jimmy Butler's injury is going to be, what is your prediction for the playing game on Friday night?
The Heat will still find a way, I think. Even though it's kind of wild though, because this is the exact matchup for last year, right? Like the Heat just pulled that out against the Bulls at the end. But yeah, I give it to them. I'm like, until someone stomps on their grave, I'm not counting out the Heat from getting into the playoffs in the first place. I'm certainly not going to count on the Bulls to do it. But it is. I mean, the Jimmy factor there, that is real. What Terry and Duncan Robinson look like in that game, they could come out and just have nothing. And then we'd be looking at Tyler Hero taking 30, 35 shots again. So in that situation, you have to give Bulls more than a fighting chance there. But I'm still leaning my hard Miami. Where are you on this one?
Yeah, I think the Heat are not going to die. I think the Celtics, in order to prevail, need to slay their past enemies, the past dragon, proverbial dragon, metaphorical dragon. It'll be good. Like Spo will give them. I think Spo's just the best coach in the league. He's going to play in the mud. I think he can junk up a zone and for one game and beat the Bulls. And I think he's going to throw everything in the kitchen sink against the Celtics. But my way too early prediction at this point is going to be Celtics in 5 over the Miami Heat. I just think that they're way too talented. And especially if Jimmy Butler is hurt tonight, has to play through a game on Friday night, and then come back on Sunday and play the 1 o'clock start. I think that's just an easy way for the Celtics to kind of get started. That being said, the Celtics play 3 games over the first week. They got a Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday schedule. So potentially a lot of time for a player like Jimmy Butler to rest up. But I think that's also just beneficial to the Celtics, who, they're going to need their bigs, especially Kristaps and Al Horford, well rested. But a lot of time between games.
Yeah, that's gonna be a long week. But I guess to talk to a little bit more of the Celtics here for a theoretical matchup with those gaps in there, Packard, where do you want to see these guys like minutes wise? Like especially guys like Horford and Porzingis out of the gate after the long break, but knowing they're going to have good recovery time in those, at least the first 3 games of this series. Like, I wonder how hard, Missoula steps on the gas with those guys, or if we do see, a random appearance by Luke Cornett here or there just to take the, just because they can.
I think ideally you are beating the Heat by 25, and then you get to throw in the scrubs for the final. Well, Joe Mazzulla is not going to do that in a playoff game. He was going to leave those guys until like 2 minutes left. I should have known that as soon as I said it. I don't know. I think that's a very good question, is like, do we get a random 6 minutes of Luke Cornett? I certainly think Joe Mazzulla is comfortable throwing it out there. I'd be more surprised if we saw Javier Tillman in there, just because I think he's such just a negative on offense. I think he's like very good in terms of moving his feet on defense and as a good perimeter defender, but I think the Heat would just completely let him take threes in the corner, and that's just not what I want to see from the Celtics in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the early rounds. They maybe gives Kornet some run, especially in
Because if it's against the Bulls for sure, right? Like if they're gonna play
the
Drummond,
Bulls,
it's
they
like,
need
oh
some
yeah,
size. Yeah, I would see like it would be Kornet makes some more sense against the Heat. I think maybe you give some Kornet some minutes when. Because who's the Heat's backup center? I guess it's Kevin Love at this point. Maybe
yeah, it's Kevin
Thomas
Love.
Bryant.
Yeah, so maybe you probably don't. You probably see Tillman if you go anyway. You probably see Tillman over Cornette there just to guard the 3-point line more. But the Heat could also just straight up like Thomas Bryant they have there too, but he just straight up didn't play tonight, and they just went one big and a bunch of wings off the bench. So yeah, I guess a lot of it is just going to be determining like, okay, who are these other teams going off their bench, and then just let's go from there. But to be honest, it might just be, you just give a few more minutes to Pritchard and Hauser and go like single big a little bit more against a team like that, and that way you can keep both Horford and Porzingis between 30 and 35 tops, and that should be sufficient.
Yeah, I'm curious how much you think they're going to play a Horford and Porzingis together, because they certainly did that a fair amount this year. I don't know if there's the most effective their offense was this year, but I think the safe space for them to be is just to have 48 minutes of those two guys at center, and so just really kind of split their time and use the kind of wing rotation and the guard rotation around those two guys more so than because the more you use those two guys together, the more likely you're going to have to use a third big like Kornet. And so I think to me, especially against a team that doesn't have a lot of size like the Heat, I think it makes sense to just kind of be single big.
I agree. I think that's just not a team that double big makes a lot of sense against, unless you're getting like destroyed at the rim for whatever reason or on the glass. But both those teams like that, a Miami team shouldn't scare them on that front. That's a team that you're more worried about everyone getting hot from 3-point range, and having Horford and Porzingis out there to deal with that is kind of playing to their hands a little bit. So keep it, double bigs, like maybe 10, 15 minutes a night tops, just maybe for a different look at some point of the game. But by and large, yeah, the best way to control those minutes is the single big look, and a team like Miami would play into their hands there. And we have some breaking news of the returns here. Arizona has been called here, so I think that bodes well for the Chicago Bulls, who are up 18 now at the end of the third quarter. So they're up to
vindicated. The Still Poddable halftime call has been vindicated. Friday night, it will be Chicago Bulls traveling to Miami in a one-game single elimination for the privilege of playing the Boston Celtics. Should be an interesting game. Should be a fun game. I do enjoy the play-in. It's been a lot of fun watching meaningful basketball over the past 2 evenings, and so get ready, folks. Playoffs are starting on Sunday. We appreciate everyone who's tuned in here on the CLNS free version of Still Poddable. If you want more Still Poddable during the playoffs, we'll be here every single day, Monday through Friday, probably sometimes on the weekends. If there's a weekend game, we'll be here with a recap. Go to patreon.com/stillpoddable. Subscribe today, and we'll be here talking Celtics basketball throughout the playoffs. From me, Jay King from The Athletic, from Brian B. Robb from masslive.com. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable, the Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh, yeah.
Go down from eating and drinking and all that wild stuff.